basically this is the structure we are talking about.
Well, that makes it good. There's more going on too. In ArcGIS, at least, like if I do an annotation on the iPad, I can synchronize it to the map, right? Like it can go back in the other direction.
So that's, it also has their own formats for hosting and serving maps and features that are closed and distinct, and they have powers or capabilities, I should say, that WX and WFS don't. I don't think WFS can support.
I've never heard of WFS before.
I'm
It's
pretty sure it doesn't support.
It's OGC standard basically for like they have made this standard all across open source stuff that you have to follow similar feature, like when you're sending a feature request back to a GIS or a KML file is a specialized form of XML file which basically has lat long coordinates or other data that we requested from our server, and it can be plugged into either Google Maps or Google Earth, and it can show data there. So
let's say I have a KML file hosted on my Dropbox account. If I pointed Google Earth to it, it could downloads the KML file, puts it on there.
So it's a client that actually can display KML on top of whatever is in. You have OpenLayers in the web browser. There are alternatives to it.
yeah.
So is whatever you use inside the web browser depending on what is used on the server?
No.
For example,
no.
could we use the ArcGIS APIs without ArcGIS server?
That's you can. Well, I'm not sure about ArcGIS.
Be careful with that, Abhi, because ArcGIS goes out of their way to make everything proprietary and lock down. They've made it worse. Like shapefiles are easier to deal with than the geodatabase files. They've made it as hard as they possibly can to use their formats independently of their API, because they want you to pay $100,000 or whatever for their suite.
I've never done it, but in theory it can be done. It says the client has layers that say WFS layer.
I have no experience with ArcGIS, but with OpenLayers you can use any kind of server, whether it's ArcGIS server, it's...
okay, so the server side can produce all these formats in all the three GIS servers that we are currently considering. The client side, OpenLayers can actually use all of it.
Yeah.
ArcGIS client can probably also use all of it, but ArcGIS server is providing extra features that can only be used by ArcGIS clients. Is this the bottom line?
I think that is the case. There's also more going on in the ArcGIS server from my understanding, like that back and forth. Their big argument is that you can synchronize your annotations, you can synchronize changes and all this other kind of stuff too, right? So, and you can work. I would be very surprised if GeoServer or Map Server can deal with the modern formats of ArcGIS, which is things like So when you talk about a database, you have a SQL Server database, right? You talk about a shapefile, you have a specific file with your stuff. ArcGIS 10 moves away from that, and they encourage you to use this geodatabase format, which is a modified version of Access. I would be very, very surprised if you could use that in Map Server.
Actually, you can do that. They are developing plugins for that, so you can just use a plugin, get GeoDB format, GDB format. That's basically what files are. But those files have extension, and it works with GeoServer.
Okay, but yeah, that's surprising. Because when I asked about it in our class, he said that the formats were pretty proprietary locked down. But I guess if you can, you can.
Yeah. Coming back to the actual presentation, I would be just talking about GeoServer and a little bit about Map Server too. So this presentation is organized with basically an overview, architecture of GeoServer, input formats, pros and cons, and who uses GeoServer. So GeoServer is an open source GIS tool. I won't say it's a GIS server, it's a GIS tool that can be used for web mapping applications. It's under GNU public license. Current version is 2.1.4 that is released last Monday.
It's under the JPL?
Yeah.
So what is the terminology you're not allowed to modify, or to use it in commercial products then? Or?
No, you can use it in commercial products. But if you're making some, I think GPL is right, I'm not sure. But if you're making some changes to actual GeoServer code and then compiling it, you will have to put it online. but you never do that. You just use it. So that's fine, you can use it in commercial applications.
The deal with the GPL is if you distribute it, you have to distribute the code with it, right?
Yeah.
So
It's the most fanatical of all the licenses.
Okay. Do you have a question?
It's essentially, like the thing is, if you write code that would use that code in the sense of it actually statically, or it links to it, that's the point where you also have to have your code running under GPL.
But if so you can't make any modifications to the GeoServer code, you just have, what if I make a modification to it and then I use it as a freestanding tool?
In the sense of you make that modification and you actually, you make that modification and you use that in a product you release, then you as well have to release that GeoServer modification you did. You have to make it available.
So if I used GeoServer and I made an app on the App Store, and GeoServer provided the backend to the app, and I made a modification to GeoServer, I'd have
GeoServer is living on your server, right? So it's never distributed to anyone, so you don't have to give that away.
That's interesting.
There are variants of the GPL that get around this loophole, where because they recognize that software is increasingly software as a service, people can take a GPL software, run it on their server, modify it, benefit from it, and never have to share that again. But the GPL does not require you to do that if you never distribute it.
Yeah, it's essentially if you write an application that has GeoServer inside it, so it actually has the code written under GPL inside. That's the point where you also have to have your code that uses it under GPL. But if you're using like a web server that is under GPL and your web, you're accessing that web server, it's not combined. It's not a combination of two products.
Okay.
In that sense, it uses that product, but it's not combined.
It's just consuming services from that server, so you're not modifying that. The next thing is it publishes data from all the major, almost all the major spatial data sources using open standards. So talking about data sources, we have SQL Server, we have Postgres, we have shapefiles, we have services, WS services from other GeoServers or other publishing servers. Next thing is GeoServer fits very well with OpenLayers. OpenLayers is a free mapping library that I will talk about in the next presentation. The last thing is that GeoServer is built on GeoTools. It's an open source Java GIS toolkit. Using Java has some performance issues with GeoServer when compared to map server.
Our experience with GeoServer was horrific. In terms of its constant randomly crashing. Do you experience the same thing when you use GeoServer in the other context?
Actually, no. That is the honest answer. Because I think when we started using GeoServer in 6.15, we were more like in a learning phase, and some people in our team were actually hitting up on open source stuff. So that was one of the reasons we dropped GeoServer out of the picture.
So what exactly is, what were we doing wrong that caused it to fail then?
Everything.
No, but what was wrong with it? Like we just plugged PostgreSQL into it and it crashed all the time, so why?
I remember it crashed only twice, not more than that.
Okay, okay, we'll talk about it later.
Well, this is one of the new features they have recently included, super overlays.
What's that? Super overlays.
Well, it's another buzzword that they have included, like they've launched it. They have released the new version last Monday, and they're calling it we have super overlay support for Google Earth. So super overlays is something that Google has launched a few days back. So you can see surface or maybe say images at 45-degree angle, and so it's right now what we see for a map is we have a top view of the map, right? And Google Maps and Google Earth, they are providing a 45-degree view, so you can actually see buildings and structures from.
So basically, super overlay is not 2D, but it's 3D.
It's closer to 3D. It's not 3D.
It's 2.5D.
Yeah, 2.5D.
No, it's 2D plus 45 degrees.
Yeah. It's 2.25D.
It's from one specific angle. It's not that you can look at it from every angle you want to. It's only one specific angle that it provides. So if you have building structures, you don't look at them from the top. but you can as well look at them from the 45-degree angle. That's all there is to it.
Next interesting thing about GeoServer is they have provided a web cache with it. You can, well, it's up to you if you want to cache your data, and usually caching is recommended when you have a static data and you want to show it like request for that data again and again.
So basically that avoids regenerating the same map again and again and again.
So you can have a set of resolutions and an extent. So I have like from zoom level 10 to zoom level 25, and I give an extent, so extent over Calgary, and I generate all those JPEG images and cache them. So the rendering is a lot faster. And the last thing is GeoServer provides a RESTful interface in case you want to programmatically access it rather than accessing it through the web admin interface that I will show next. So this was the architecture that we basically saw in the first discussion that we did. So what are the input formats? The input formats of vector data is shapefiles, GIS database, external WFS layers. This is the interesting component with GeoServer. You can actually chain GeoServers to have, so if you have a GeoServer, one say a beast, and you have another GeoServer maybe somewhere in cloud. So you can get the data, say a WFS layer out of a GeoServer that is on the beast and use it in the GeoServer that is on the cloud. So you do not have to directly access secure databases. It's another, well, they call it another mechanism to provide secure access to your databases because.
So basically you would have GeoServer as an intermediate to other GIS resources somewhere on the web, and you can use GeoServer for caching the information from these and so on.
Yeah. For the raster formats, it takes the data from ArcGrid, GeoTIFF, GTOP30, Image Mosaic, and World Image. World Image is basically a big JPEG image or PNG image, and you can use it as a static or maybe an interactive image that works on different zoom levels.
What about standard JPEG or PNG?
You can use that. That's like Image Mosaic. So when it comes to licensing, it's a weird license, like weird clause, and even in Google Maps, that if you're using Google Maps and you are putting some data on, like a layer on Google Maps, and it's inside a password protected or like authentication mechanism, it's not legal.
Yeah, it's whether the application is public facing. Esri has the same clause in there. If it's a public facing application, that's legal to do whatever you want. If it's an internal application for just about any purpose other than education, you can't.
You cannot use it. And same is with Bing.
With what?
Bing Maps.
Okay.
So this was the web admin interface I was talking about. It's really easy to understand how to use it. And you can have basically generate layers on one click, attach more databases, add layers, add stores. That's like straightforward 15 or 20 minutes tutorial if you want to walk through it. Then who uses GeoServer? Might be interested, guys. So these are some big organizations that are actually using GeoServer, and their websites are up and live and running GeoServer backend databases, like backend with whatever clients they are using. The important ones are Ordnance Survey, that's the National Mapping Agency of the UK. So the servers don't crash like that. That happened with us. Then World Bank is using it for showing where, like, how's the financial distribution of it or something that I did not.
Thanks.
Something. And Global United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. So these are some big names that are using GeoServer. Where you can find support for this. OSGeo Forum is very active community when it comes to finding support for open source GIS, whether it's OpenLayers, Map Server, or GeoServer. Just need to post the right question in the right forum, and you would definitely find an answer. There's a GeoServer mailing list which is maintained by OpenGeo, an organization like a not-for-profit organization from New York, and they are basically funded from United Nations and some other agency. And then you have the GeoServer website with all the documentation. Any questions?
So bottom line is map server is fast, GeoServer is easy
to
use, and ArcGIS server is comprehensive and is done standard but costly.
And also, I would say you could probably add easy to use as
Easy to use.
you have to know what to do with any server, but it does take care of a lot of issues for you. You don't have to compile anything for
Which one is the easiest
No, you
to
don't
learn?
have to compile map server to Google.
No, I mean you don't have to, but there's a certain amount of technical know-how I think that's.
You have to be able to interpret the random Java crashes. If you don't know Java,
Well,
it's
you have
hard.
to interpret that with ArcGIS too.
Yeah.
There's the argument.
Please, no more elbows.
Okay, so what would you consider the easiest to learn? The hardest to learn sounds like map server.
I'd say that's really easy to learn.
I would say GeoServer is easiest to learn.
Okay, so basically head on head.
No, I don't
Do we
think
have anyone
there's no
who's
one here
all
who has
three?
any experience with both Esri and GeoServer, except for me in the sense that we gave up on GeoServer because it was.
Yeah, you gave up within 5 minutes, right?
I've used a bit of map server and mostly Esri, and I would say yeah, map server was quite intimidating to use, and I found it very difficult to find out what the server was doing, whether it was working or not, which was kind of challenging.
But it is fast.
It's hard to tell if it's fast. I also have not used any really large data sets. Esri is fast for my purposes, but I'm never moving around more than 100 points and vectors at the same time.
Okay. Client-side APIs.
Yeah, I'll just continue with that.
Okay.
So essentially, there is no documentation and nobody ever tried to compare these three guys.
They did try to compare map server and GeoServer on the scale of performance basis. This was a presentation in conference in 2010.
Yeah.
And what they figured out is map server works a lot faster with vector data. That is not dynamically generated. Like I'm talking about like order of magnitude 5 or 6.
Factor 5 or 6 or order of magnitude?
Order of magnitude
5?
That's for data that's like
times faster?
5 orders of magnitude?
Yeah.
yeah.
Really?
Like when you have a data set of like 100,000 points and which is being added, like maybe 100 points are added per second. So GeoServer would basically, like you will have to wait for 10 or 15 minutes if you have to see that layer.
Okay. How many people do have these questions? Like essentially, like how I take this, there is no real documentation or like as far as like I hear from this discussion, because typically this is like this should be solved. This should be a solved problem. Like there should be knowledge. You're going to use this or that, that for this, that for that. Or like have at least some guideline as to what server you're going to use for a specific set of problems.
Well, you don't have any documentation for that. That's
So
One of the
why don't
things
people write
is-
papers about this?
So, my kind of gut feeling with this kind of thing is that, how do I phrase this politically correctly? Geomatics people have some computer science training. They think they have more computer science training than they do. And so people who typically use these kind of things are probably going to come from a geomatics background more than a computer science background. So kind of like the idea of carefully considering the pros and cons of all of these and organizing it is probably more of a computer science way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think geomatics people are less likely to be that comprehensive about it. So I think a lot of this stuff is used by geomatics people.
Yeah. So essentially what I'm saying is we are computer scientist people. Why don't we do that? That is actually my question. Would it actually make sense? Like in the sense of like having actually some guy sitting down analyzing this for a thesis or something. Would this actually like bring the field forward? Would this actually make sense? Because I don't see that we're the only guys having this discussion.
Sounds like a good paper.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the problem that I really see is the people that use geomatics, GIS systems are geomatics experts. They are all trained on ArcGIS because it's the industry standard. For a large organization, $50,000 in license fees is not a big thing when they save hundreds of hours in not having to retrain people.
Mm.
So it's the same thing. Nobody in the past was fired for buying IBM machines. Okay, that's a long path.
Yeah, but still, at some point, the field went to using Apache as a web server or something. Like, it happened before. Like that, we moved away from proprietary software.
And that's what we are.
That's why I say, like, wouldn't it make sense?
And what you see is a lot of these organizations that were listed are cash World Bank, government organizations that are always caught short on investments, funding for investments. While they are usually not short on funding for operational. But
I didn't see X, I saw government. And the other problem too is often there's legislation that forces government agencies to use open source software. I think in Germany, everyone in the government has to use like
that was at one point in time, it's not.
So I don't see ExxonMobil, I don't see companies that make money from things.
And again, that's in my opinion easy to explain because governments often have problems for investment money, but they have operational funds. So what they basically are doing by using open source, they are reducing the investment and are replacing it with people. While companies often are very rich and can simply pay the license fee.
And there are some legislature issues. When you have to use Google Maps with Fusion Table, you will have to go through Google terms and conditions to use it. But with this, you can have your open source database, you have your data under your control, and it's not like somebody is looking into your data, looking for all these stuff. So that is one of the benefits of using like entire open source stack. Next presentation is client-side APIs for web mapping applications. I just replaced GIS applications with web mapping applications because this is the specific term that is used in like forums and all the documents that I found, and basically this is what I'm using in pieces. So I would push on this using web mapping. What is web mapping application? Some application that has a map in it and layers can be swapped in and swapped out and runs in a browser. It's a web mapping application. That is the simplest definition that I found. Let's talk about OpenLayers. OpenLayers is open source, provided under BSD license. It's a JavaScript library for showing map data in the browsers. So, I'm still not sure about the license, but with FreeBSD license, you can modify it and keep it for your organization rather than just like sending it over on the internet, so it's not viral. And this is one of really beneficial things for OpenLayers because there are a lot of instances where you have to modify some code inside OpenLayers to make it work, and it's just yours. You do not have to throw it outside.
Why is that?
Well, some of the features that you want to create are specific to your application, and you want to implement it yourself. Like the simplest example that we ran into was we have this pan and zoom control on the map, and it was very small when you're using that for a smart board or So we went into OpenLayers code and we just changed the CSS and the JavaScript that was pointing to it. It was fine.
So you couldn't. So there was no separation of.
It's kind of wrapped up together, but the code is like it takes time, but you can actually modify the code and understand what's going on. Okay. So OpenLayers map stores information about default projection, extents, units, and like all the client-side mapping library stuff. Then inside the map you have a layer like what ArcGIS shows. You can switch on, turn on, and turn off layers without refreshing the page. That is one of the benefits.
The look and feel of the map, so the cartography, which one is more powerful? Can you pretty much do both things, all the same things?
Well, I've only used the ArcGIS mobile, like an application, not just a web page.
Same, yeah. So it's kind of difficult to compare. I would expect the basic features are quite similar. ArcGIS does have a lot of
ArcGIS has a JavaScript API, which
Yes.
runs inside the browser.
Yes, but I've never used it, so.
I looked at it very briefly, and it looked to be a little bit, or it had significantly fewer features than the desktop client-side APIs, but it seemed like it was basically the same thing.
So the JavaScript API and the desktop APIs are not identical.
They're not identical, but they're structured the same way, so you'll see a lot of the same class names come up, which is very nice. You learn how to navigate one, the others will work basically the same way, but some of the random, more advanced features, visualizations just didn't seem to be there, so it looked like it was just minor. But I really couldn't comment much on the ArcGIS JavaScript API when I used it.
The WPF and the iOS APIs are, well, especially the WPF API has a bunch of stuff you get for free. Like
Yes.
Christian's 3D warping thing came from ArcGIS. The
In WPF.
WPF. Yeah. So I think they have the WPF is probably the gold standard, which is surprising because I once heard that they canceled it, but and then everything else just sort of
Microsoft is
falls.
canceling WPF, so
Well, they're canceling Silverlight at a certain point. I don't think they've given up on WPF yet.
Wasn't that a big discussion?
Anyways, the point is, I think that the WPF is the sort of gold standard one that has the most stuff, and then the rest of them just sort of like.
and mobile APIs. So that is pure JavaScript.
Sorry, it can be used on mobile as well.
But in a mobile browser.
In a mobile browser.
Windows 8.
And if you use, and if you're basically using a map in a mobile browser, you would simply embed the HTML. That's what you would do on iOS too.
This is kind of a long-running discussion, but I'll just note one of the big disadvantages of embedding HTML pages into apps is that you're not going to see the same JavaScript performance. So Apple, and I don't know about Android, but I know on Apple, they put quite a lot of work into creating faster JavaScript interpreters. For security reasons, they can't do the same thing inside of an app. So you get a much worse JavaScript performance when you embed an HTML page in an app than if you run it in Safari.
So to use a map in an app in iOS, there are
better frameworks to use.
There are better frameworks, and OpenLayers has such a framework, or ArcGIS has such a framework.
ArcGIS does, and there's a built-in one that comes with. Well, I'll talk about it in a bit.
I don't think OpenLayers has that support.